Hello, my name is Major Mike Webb, and I am both a former candidate for Arlington Public School Board, a community with most government scientists in the nation, and the lead advocate and plaintiff in what has become the Fauci virus litigation, at least since just after the celebration of Independence Day, all of which make for quite a bit of tragically comic irony during an election year in which the most important issue for public schools was reopening after what has been popularly described, at least, as a global public health crisis, which, from its very inception, found sufficient elements for many, mostly for partisan, not scientific reasons, to label the phenomena a hoax. Perhaps to a more military-minded individual, may more aptly be described as what is referred to as a ruse or trick, which is often coupled with a feint or stratagem or tactic to achieve some other end or result while distracting one's adversary's attention. So, under the framework of military science, in this video series, which we are wrapping up, we have been examining a novel coronavirus alleged by scientists, government scientists, to have been zoonotically evolved through the microscopic lens of a military planner and intelligence analyst, and its unique and very desirable gains of function for, as Karl von Clausewitz had so wonderfully described, as, shall we say, an extension of policy by other means. Hence, we have used the specifications desirable in acquisition to fulfill the principles of war for an invisible enemy. In the last video installments, we have examined the principles of maneuver, objective, offensive operations, simplicity, economy of force, and its reciprocal presentation in mass. The first 6 principles that are contained in the acronym mnemonic device MOOSMUS. And we found that in mass, particularly relevant to our present litigation, there are a number of features that natural scientists have even well described that provide the novel coronavirus truly desirable gains of function, perhaps in dual-use research of concern for a military operational planner that in no way, shape, manner, or form could conceivably have evolved in nature, and would therefore of necessity, bitter necessity, had to have been cultivated in a laboratory. A claim passionately rejected, however, by government scientists who may have a particular interest. And it is that emotional component in the scientific argument that a poker player might describe as a tell, like Spock suddenly getting emotional, granting rise to what a good attorney might describe as a reasonable suspicion. So now we turn, in this military analysis, to the last 3, simply stated as unity of command, surprise, and security, or USS, just like the USS Theodore Roosevelt, a warship that had been removed from its military purpose in the Sino-Pacific at the beginning of the public health crisis, after an infamous email to high-level naval officers on March 28, 2020. Timing is very important. And the emergency use authorization declaration by former HHS Secretary Alex Azar on the prior day, March 27, 2020, to address what? A significant threat to national security, defined as members of the active duty military and citizens residing abroad, as we had discussed before. And these dates, separated by only 1 day, have become rather significant in our present litigation, brought upon extraordinary writ to the nation's highest court, the United States Supreme Court, and provides the perfect segue for discussing this principle of unity of command as a gain of function for a novel coronavirus, alleged perhaps in ruse to achieve a feint, to have been zoonotically evolved. What to a military leader or commander is unity of command? There is a point at which a final decision must be made. Point of no return, we often speak of in aviation. That, and also space travel, that decision must be made by a single authority. The buck stops here. This ensures all efforts are focused on a common goal. Get everybody on the same sheet of music. And in this infamous email, which was published in its entirety by the Washington Post when the commander of the USS Theodore Roosevelt, Captain Brett Crozier, had been relieved from command of a Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, the fastest and most powerful warship in the world, a removal of significant strategic assets in a troubled region, ceding domination of control of the seas to an adversary power that ironically had just launched its second of only 2 aircraft carriers, far inferior in capability to our own, while everyone was more concerned in the press about feelings and compassionate commanders. And a diplomat, however, probably more than any other high-level government official, would certainly recognize the destabilizing effect of just that one act for a balance of power in the military theater. And there is one telling line in that infamous email, dated March 28th, and forwarding a predated indicative of pre-planning, dated March 30th, which had also been published almost immediately in the San Francisco Chronicle in an exclusive. And that said, this may require a political solution. This line stands out not just because the controversy that had filled the headline certainly became political, even finding the Democrat candidate Joe Biden recommending that the officer, Commander Captain Brett Crozier, receive a commendation and not be fired, especially after the former commander-in-chief had relieved the warship's officer from his duties of command, but also because certainly with the multiple stories regarding military members caught wearing MAGA hats and allegations of violations of the Hatch Act, a word that has significant naval connotations, most should be very aware that the military generally engages in social distancing from all matters of politics. Social distancing that on February 28th, commander of the aircraft carrier, Captain Brett Crozier, had actually suspended, the subject of an IG report back in February that found him at fault. And there is even a law dating back to 1878 known as the Posse Comitatus Act that makes that illegal to use military force in domestic matters, or at least limit its use. Unity of command. Unity of command. Or that point at which a final decision must be made, and made by a single authority, to ensure that all efforts are focused on a common goal. Point of no return, no way out. And in the last video segment, we had discussed a scientific research paper that had been published back in January 2021, which of course you read, around the time of an alleged insurrection at the Capitol and an inauguration, traditionally a peaceful transfer of power. And we had noted that, ironically, despite the great significance of the findings regarding the unique capabilities of the VIRIOLs, measuring between 0.25 and 0.50 nanomicrons for a novel coronavirus, alleged by government scientists who have been zoonotically evolved, it has found not even one mention in the national or international press. Yet, from a scientific perspective, the findings were quite astonishing because there is credible and convincing evidence of what would be a rare occurrence in nature, or the novel coronavirus, zoonotically evolved, that had granted a unity of command component or gain of function to a biological agent that had often been described as an invisible enemy. A unique gain of function that would be of great interest to a military planner. A virus is just a single strand of RNA, or sometimes DNA, that will convert to RNA upon acquisition of a living host. And most natural scientists would place this biochemistry component in that realm of masses that we might fairly describe in grammar school science as a solid, not a liquid, nor a gas. And when it comes to the topics of ionization and magnetic capabilities, these discussions in science are generally limited to certain metals and gases outside of those persons who present themselves at congressional hearings and raise claims that metal objects are sticking to their foreheads after taking vaccines. Certainly, at the subatomic level in chemistry, in discussions about electrons, protons, and neutrons, we again find much foundation for these subjects of natural attraction. But rarely, if ever, as a characteristic for a genome, as a virus, or its smaller break-off particles, the invasive viriole. But with a novel coronavirus, however, alleged to be zoonotically evolved, sometimes quite passionately, by government scientists, where I find myself surrounded. Apparently, nature has given to this one species a breath of life with electrical power that enables it to be expelled into the air, defy currents and other factors to group with other virioles, and maximize its potential for delivering a sufficient infectious dose. Unlike any other virus in the world. But certainly, as evident in the study, granting it a gain of function that would enable it to defeat even medical-grade protection in penetrating force and under sufficient exposure, making all protection efforts futile. And that is a significant departure from the natural order and truly evolved science that might have given rise to that anomaly, which provides another great segue to the next and eighth principle of war, that of surprise. Surprise is deploying against a suspect at an unexpected time or place in an unanticipated manner. A biological agent, colorless, odorless, and capable of only being seen under an electron microscope, possessed with a unique gain of function that is an anomaly in nature by possessing this ionization capacity, which has even been further developed in the scientific literature regarding problems arising in treatment of COVID-19 because of the actions of what are called free radicals, would certainly be indicative that, let us just say for now, nature has uniquely adapted a novel coronavirus, springing from the least likely biological threat to mankind, with a capability to satisfy the principle of surprise. And the final principle of war, perhaps the most important to a military planner, for the purposes of achieving military objectives, is the principle of security, because our plans must be kept secret, movements guarded, equipment, command, posts, and communications protected. The incident commander or operator who understands and applies these principles gains a substantial advantage over one who does not. And we must assume, particularly with regard to this unique capability, that you had no need, nor apparently desire to know, but which has actually been given prominence on an official scientific brief that was published by the CDC in open source in May, and apparently for those who understand, have been read on its importance. The statement simply reads under the subtitle, Prevention of COVID-19 Transmission. The infectious dose of SARS-CoV-2 needed to transmit infection has not been established. And that should mean something, at least to a government scientist. And education makes a man unfit to be a slave. This briefing is unclassified, as you were. My name is Major Mike Webb, and by God, I had run for Arlington Public School Board, and also ran to the sound of the guns to catch a novel coronavirus in court. So let's keep Mike Webb away from our school. Honest. This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.